I don't know if she could hear us. Lori, can you hear us? Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Lori might be having some issues as well. I know, Kathy, you were logging on first thing this morning, or this afternoon, actually. This session is not going to be really long. We are getting a best practices webinar series. Last week we started with just getting up and running with remote learning, you know, some of the basics, some of the things to keep in mind to make sure that you're making that smooth transition for your students, your parents, and yourself as you go from traditional to remote. So today we are focusing, our best practices series is communication. And everything we talk about with communication is going to be from low tech to high tech, and we'll talk about that in a second. But first, let's introduce ourselves. So I am Jill Pellegrini. I'm Director of Professional Development for iLearn Collaborative. I'm responsible for working with individual teachers as well as district cohorts of teachers in designing learning pathways based on instructional needs and interests. And Rosemary, do you want to jump on and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Rosemary Sweat. I do content development and course design and facilitate courses for iLearn Collaborative.
And Rosemary, just a little background on us. We've known each other for several years, over a decade actually. We both come from traditional classroom. We were both together in a virtual teaching environment, Colorado Virtual Academy. So we spent time there. And then we both moved over into a blended school, Falcon Virtual Academy, now known as Spring Studio for Academic Excellence, down in Colorado Springs. And we were both blended instructors there. So we had an enriched virtual model that we implemented with our students. And then that led to course development for teachers, getting into training teachers in blended instruction. And then that's how we ended up at ILC, or iLearn Collaborative. So a little bit about iLearn Collaborative. We are about creating equity, building capacity of educators. We believe in student-centered learning and advancing student-centered learning through technology integration. So our services range from consulting with districts for technology integration, acting as thought partners in that transition to one-to-one, as well as helping with technology infrastructure of school districts and so forth. We also have professional development, which I just mentioned before when I was talking about our background. And then we have under open educational resources, we have a digital content warehouse. And that houses over 70 student course templates or content templates. So they are considered courses and they are accessible to educators as well as districts in order to provide online digital curriculum for students. So just a little bit about ILC. So today's agenda, this is going to be a quick one. So we are going to focus entirely on communication, some of the best practices with communication. Kathy, you're already using an LMS, so a lot of this, you are going to find yourself obviously in the medium to high tech category, but we are, for the sake of this webinar, for anybody who's viewing it, we are covering some no-tech options of best practices for communication, low-tech options, and medium to high-tech options. We're going to have a quick Q&A at the end of the session, and then we are going to share our webinar resources with you. So starting with no-tech communication, phone calls, absolutely essential for communication. And based on your class size, obviously, if you are an elementary teacher, it's easy for you to make those phone calls on a weekly basis. Best practice is a weekly basis for direct communication with students and parents. Obviously, if you're a secondary teacher, your class load is going to be greater, so you will have to determine the best schedule for communication, whether that's going to be bi-weekly, Weekly communication may be a little too much, but if you separate your phone calls so that every day you're making some phone calls with your families to make sure that you are checking in with them, that's definitely your target. Group messaging is also recommended in terms of no tech communication. We're talking about phone communication, but if smartphones are available to parents, even if your students don't have access, but your parents have cell phones, you could do some group texting through those cell phones. Group texting directed to parents, but then also involving that student in that communication. And then lastly, of course, we have our snail mail. So, you know, sending postcards home to your families. And if packets are going out once a week or bi-weekly, make sure that you are attaching some letters of communication, a quick newsletter, along with the schedule, what students are to be completing in those packets, navigation, any, you know, questions regarding what parts of the packet to complete first and so forth. All of that communication should be attached to those packets. The main thing we're focusing on with communication with our students and even with our parents, you know, how are you doing right now? You know, what's working, what's not working, how can I help? What do you need from me? This is most essential, and teachers need to know what their students need right now. You know, a really good example of this, concrete example, is I have a daughter in high school, and with her math teacher, she is used to the way the math book is set up. It doesn't necessarily explain how to work through certain problems. So she really always used the instruction that her teacher provided in the classroom for that. And when that was absent, the teacher was not providing that kind of direct instruction. And so she reached out to her teacher and she asked for a video or something that would help her understand how to work through certain problems. And he said he needed to know that from her in order to know what to provide, you know, in terms of helping her in helping the other students in the class. Now that's really focused on instruction, and we are going to get into instruction later in our webinar series. But again, the point of communication is, you know, she had to be the proactive individual and ask for the help that she needed. By being in charge of your own communication, you'll know, you won't have students stressing if they need something from you. You're going to know off the bat. So that's really our goal here with this communication. Okay, so low tech communication, Google Voice is a great tool to use. Again, it's all through it's phone communication. So if those cell phones are available to your families, Google Voice is a really good option. You could do group texting, group messaging, as well as voicemail messages out to your family and so forth. So it's an excellent tool to investigate. And we're going to provide links to all of these tools in the document, and I'll show you what that looks like really quickly here on the next slide. In terms of email, email is also considered low tech. So it takes nothing to send 2 emails a week to your families. One is always going to be a schedule. Hey, this is what I want you to be working on this week. Here's our focus for instruction. Here's our focus for assessments. And then the second one is always going to be a temp check. So making sure that you are, again, checking in with your students. What do you need? How can I help? And so forth. So really two best practices, 2 pieces of communication going out through email if this is your mode of communication. And then also utilize pre-recorded videos. So if you have people in your department, your content, recording any videos in terms of weekly tasks, schedules, you know, communication updates and so forth, utilize those videos. And that also falls under low tech communication because you're not in charge of making those videos yourself. All right, and then lastly is the high tech, medium to high tech communication. And I know, Kathy, you fall into this category, but here are some tools that I'm going to quickly show you. Let me move my bar here.
Well, you know, I just want to let you know that, I mean, there's some, you know, like I use Remind normally, but
Yeah.
our district's not allowing us to do
Yes,
that.
and that's a good point, and that's the caveat to what I was just going to be messaging on this page. First of all, I just want to quickly show you, we're going to share this resource. It's going to have all the tools that we discussed today. However, as you brought out, Kathy, really, really good point, always check with your district. A lot of districts are they have certain digital tools that they have subscriptions to themselves, and certain ones that you can use with your students or your families. It's going to be based on FERPA. It's going to be based on privacy and settings and so forth. So always check with your district first. These are some tools that, if your district allows you to use, they're great communication tools. As you said, Kathy, you know, Remind 101, Class Parrot, and Class Pager are perfect tools for that group messaging. So you could set that up with your, especially if your students are older students and they have phones, cell phones, even parent communication. They're great tools to use for that. In your case, Kathy, you have a great communication hub, assuming you could get it up and running here shortly, hopefully. But
really, it's just Schoology. Schoology is what's driving us crazy right now. So without that, Google is doing great. I'm doing Google Meets and all of those things. So we're good. Yeah.
That's perfect. That's perfect. And as you know, these are really, really good hubs. I know I had a teacher last week in our webinar. She was setting up Class JoJo for her class, which is very, very popular, especially with our elementary teachers. So if they don't have access to an LMS like Schoology or Canvas, or Moodle, or they're not using Google Classroom, that's definitely a good hub for communication. And the best way to communicate is using those announcements, the updates, the discussion boards. If you finally get set up, Kathy, and you've got your Schoology set up, just having those discussion boards of, hey, here's a place you could put your questions. If you're having issues, if you need some direct instruction on something specific, go to our discussion board. This is where you're going to put those questions in there. I'm checking it daily, and I'll make sure that I answer everybody every single day. And then temp checks. I really love temp checks with students. If you have an LMS, and I'm sure you've used the polling tools in Schoology, the LMSs that are set up for those temp checks, again, you could use your discussion, you could use your announcements, but you could also send SurveyMonkey if your district allows you to use other tools. SurveyMonkey is free. And it's a great way to even touch base with your parents, sending a survey to your parents. Hey, what do you need from me? How can I support you as you are the one home with your students and side by side, and really they're learning partners at this point, taking over as the learning partner on a daily basis. So this is a great way to touch base with both of them. And they're probably very familiar with SurveyMonkey. I know in my own kids' schools, SurveyMonkey is always, signing up for, volunteering and so forth. So it's a great tool to use for in education as well. And then synchronous meetings, LMS conference tools, number one, if you have access to an LMS, as you do, Kathy, the conference tool within Schoology is great. Obviously, you don't have to worry about security and so forth because it's a school account. And I know many districts who use an LMS will have them use the conference tools. But Google does have the security built into their meeting spaces now, and we do share that information in our tools, the link that we'll share with you. And Microsoft Teams is really great for department meetings and other communication with parents. All of these work with parents as well. In terms of asynchronous, so we're talking pre-recorded videos that you will push out. You could send these through cell phones, group messaging, text messaging, all of these tools you could send your videos through, posting them obviously in your LMS, Google Classroom, and so forth. But we recommend tools like Screencastify, Jing for really quick little video messages you want to get to your students. It gives you a link immediately, so you could just push that link out. Vocaroo is great audio. And again, you don't have to download. So with Vocaroo, you literally just record on the screen. As soon as it's done, it gives you a link, and that link can be shared with your families. It might just be a, hey, happy Monday to everybody. You know, or, you know, we have a holiday coming up and wishing everybody a really happy Easter, and you know, whatever the case may be, you know, especially in this time, the more personal communication you can provide to your families, students, and parents, this is what they need right now more than anything. Voki is fun. Voki is animation. So you could do, you know, a shark talking, you could do an Easter bunny talking, you know, make it really fun, especially your elementary. I was secondary, and I used it with my high school kids, you know, and you could do all kinds of goofy messaging, and, you know, there's little, you know, accents. You could do your own voice in your messaging, use your own voice with an animated character, but they're super fun. And it's a link, again, you could share through anything with your families. And then finally, the last one is Padlet.
There's also, Jill,
yeah, go ahead, Rosemary.
I just wanted to add Voki Classroom right now is free, and for the next 3 months or something. So you can actually use deeper kind of activities with Voki also. Just
that's good. And there. Especially when you're doing instruction, Rosemary, that's something that we'll definitely bring into some instructional practices and student engagement. Yeah, great, Rosemary. Thank you for bringing that out. So Voki Classroom, you want to check that out. And then Padlet is a virtual wall, and you can use it to post a video. Kids could use it to post images. And the nice thing is, if you have an LMS, you can embed it directly into your LMS with an embedded code. And that is fun. I know students love using Padlet because you can make all kinds of different backgrounds, and you can put, like I said, you put videos. And the nice thing about putting a video on there is the video will not show all videos. So, you know, if you use a YouTube under Creative Commons license, an open educational resource, even that YouTube, you'll open it and there's a list of all these other videos that you may not want your students to have access to. And so the nice thing about Padlet is it keeps it condensed right there on the wall, and you don't have to worry about that. So yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
I have a quick question. I tried to go ahead and I went on CK12, and they gave you a link to be able to assign your whatever your assignments were on that to Google Classroom. But here's the problem. If you say yes, they're able to see all your kids' emails, all their profile, and everything else. And liability wise, I'm not sure if that's okay.
Yeah, no. And again, that goes back to making sure that you're checking with your district and everything is done inside. I know, like, when we use Padlet in our classes, the virtual wall does not take anybody outside. It's literally clicking on it and making a post directly onto the Padlet. And it's safe and secure because, again, it's not, the kids aren't putting any information in there. It's literally just writing on a virtual wall right inside the LMS. So these are really good points that you're bringing up, Kathy. And these are the things that, you know, always check with your district and know what's going to be safe and secure for your students when you're choosing the best digital tools. Great point. All right, so just ending with something a little funny that we end our webinars with, and this is from Reader's Digest, and just again emphasizing the point that communication is absolutely essential and key to successful remote learning. And sometimes it seems like our students are on one planet and we're on another planet and there's no communication. So I thought this was kind of a cute way to end the webinar, when the boy says, you know, I just don't know, it's like she's speaking another language. She's a Spanish teacher. So I thought that was kind of fun. All right, so questions, Kathy, any other questions that and if you have a question that we can't answer, one thing that we will do is we will you know, you could reach out to us through email, and I'll show you the links of where you could get in contact with us. And then we will investigate, find the appropriate resources and answers to your question, go back to our team of experts, and we'll get an answer to you. So
Okay.
do you have any questions right now? Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I have a question regarding the email I got this morning about the course description, right? Do you know what I'm talking about?
All right. Is this for Open Educate Introduction to OER?
Let me see. Course online. No, wait, let me find it.
Okay.
It is no, so I got an email this morning that says this is the course that we are doing, and welcome to your, here it is, welcome to your, it's from you, ILCPD course, Introduction to OER. Yeah, that's it. So that's the course I'm talking about. So with us doing what we're doing and kind of piloting this whole thing, and regardless of if you want credit or not, is this everything that, I mean, we're supposed to be looking at the webinars, and we're supposed to be part of that, but other than, I mean, there's things like designing stuff and all of this, that's not really pertinent, is it?
No. And
Okay.
so even the webinars that we're doing, these webinars, the series is really just to help teachers, you know, sharing best practices and helping them with remote learning, since this transition, this unprecedented transition from traditional to remote. You know, there's so many that need resources and help and guidance. And the course itself that you are signed up for, that is introducing you to open educational resources, free content, free digital content that you can use in your classes. It's also going to teach you how to choose the best resources, how to remix resources, how to create resources that you yourself can contribute to under Creative Commons licensing, and contribute to open educational resources movement. And so that's what that course is focusing on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm so glad you're in that class too, because Rosemary is the lead facilitator for that class, and I'll be facilitating as well. So yeah, welcome then, Kathy. We'll be seeing a lot of you.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm not sure if I'm, you know, I was like looking at that and I'm going, well, I don't know if I really want to do all of it because of time restraints, but I'll do as much as I can. Yeah,
absolutely. And so upcoming webinars, these are some of the topics that are coming up. If there's something you don't see, you can put it in today's chat box. You could also get in contact with us, and I'm going to go ahead and share with you the link to our document that we are giving. We share at the end of every webinar, and it includes, Rosemary, do you mind sharing that in the chat for me, please? At the bottom, if you look at the tabs at the bottom, Kathy, you can see you can email Rosemary and me directly. So our email addresses are there. We also just added, by the way, the CDE guidelines on e-learning. iLearn Collaborative was part of the task force for Colorado Department of Education in helping them produce some guidelines for remote learning. So you could access their toolkit here. And then you have other ILC direct links there. The next tab, webinar dates and topics. So you could access what those upcoming webinars will be. And then we will also include our links to each webinar. So if you missed a webinar and you have this bookmark, Kathy, you could go back to it and you could access the webinar through the links there. And then next to that, every week, we'll include our resources for that particular webinar. So these were from last week, and these are the resources for this week. And again, many tools here, but make sure that you check with your district and school administrators before obviously utilizing any of them. So that is all we have for today. Kathy. So we thank you for joining us. And again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to either Rosemary or me, as we are happy to help you in any way that we can.
All right.
Except for LMS technical issues.
Right.
Everything else, we have no control over that.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and end this session. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, Kathy.
All right. You too.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.